All right, in this section, roughing out the level, we're going to do a whole bunch of building here. We're going to rough out the BSP for the level, add pickup functionality, movement functionality, take into consideration performance concerns, and in the end, end up revising it all so that we've got a fun level to play. First of all, we're going to take a look at some pre-built levels and talk about just methods of construction that were used. In this case, we're going to look at an outdoor terrain type level. And you can see here as we look around, there's quite a bit going on here. There's objects everywhere. This is all, of course, defining functionalities we've talked about. We can see path nodes in the ground. We can see cameras. We can see particles in the level, static meshes placed. In general, as was mentioned, quite a bit going on here. We'll make our way over to this portion of the level here, which is one of the starting bases. You see we've got this is a bombing run map. We can see we've got the ball receptor right there. If you go into wireframe mode and look around also, we can see that there is quite a bit of detail on the ground there. This is static meshes that are being placed on top of the terrain. And we can see AI scripts placed down here. These are for custom bot functionality for doing things like telling the bots that they should run to this direction and run to this position and shoot, jump here, that type of thing. We're going to talk a little bit about that more later. Also, what we've done now is taken away the static meshes so we can look at the lay of the terrain and sort of how it was built. There are some considerations to take when building terrain. For example, you can see these red plates or these red planes. These are anti-portals that have been placed for performance reasons within the level. I will talk a bit more about that later as well. And you can see here there's a little chunk of BSP geometry that's been added to add sort of a shelf there. Got a skeletal mesh over here for a flag. And all of this, again, integrates together in sort of an outdoor looking level here. This is how quite a bit of the large outdoor levels are built in Unreal. Next, we're going to go look at another outdoor level. This one, instead of being built with terrain, is built entirely out of static meshes. This is the Phase 3 map, which is two opposing pyramids across a great big sort of floating landscape. As we pull outside here, you can see what looks to be terrain, but is actually static mesh. We've got a fluid surface there on top of it. I'm going to pull around the corner here and look at the vista. We can see, again, we've got this floating terrain, or excuse me, floating static mesh, I should say. We're going to take the static mesh away and sort of look at what the BSP component of the level is. And again, you can see all of the items that have been placed across this level for functionality. Obviously, there's a whole bunch going on there. You can see as well that pyramid in the middle, as we scroll past it, it's occluding what's on the opposite side of the map. That is, again, an anti-portal that's been placed within the level to help performance. If we pull over this direction, we're going to show volumes. That's what these pink outlined objects are. For example, this volume right here is a kill zone volume that has been placed so that when the player falls off of the map, it kills him as opposed to just letting him fall indefinitely. We've got, you can see these other pink outline volumes here. These are collision volumes. These are placed to help the player collide with the environment in a way that might not be reached with the shape of the static mesh that is there, or the shape of the BSP that is there. Sometimes you can get clipping that occurs, or players will get hung up on things. Of course, we'll talk about that again later. So as we pull up to the top of this pyramid here, and take a look at the landscape, again, whole heck of a lot going on in this level, and quite a bit of work that goes into building something this size. And finally, let's go ahead and take a look at an indoor level. Technically, the way that it's built is exactly the same as this one. It's just you'll end up taking different things into account when you build it. As an indoor level, it's almost entirely built out of BSP rooms, as we saw in the previous tutorial we were looking at, and dressed out with static meshes. So all of this detailed geometry that you can see here is all static mesh geometry. If we pull into here, we can see what's a projector on the floor. That's not a real-time shadow happening. That is an animated texture being projected there, which will actually project onto players as well. Caustics from the water, I should say, being projected onto the wall with a projector. Particles emitting within those turbines there. go ahead and take a look at some of the path noding that's going on in this level. You can see pretty extensive network of path nodes happening. This is a lot more along the lines of what you'll see in finished levels, whereas what we did before was very basic. When you have a really large level like this, A with pickups and B with lots of intricate pathways in it, you're going to have to do a lot more work to make sure that your bots know how to get around within it. Go ahead and take away the static meshes so we can look at what's going on in the level just BSP-wise. BSP is fairly basic. These blue things that you see here, blue icons that you see, are more bot AI path node features. They tell the bots where to get on and off of a lift, for example. Again, all things you have to author because the AI really doesn't know what to do unless you tell it what to do, as smart as it might be. All right, and so there we've looked at a fully finished level, and let's go ahead and start building ours. Okay, so this is going to be a bit sped up in the interest of time, but I'll go ahead and talk over the top of it. You can see that I'm taking a brush and building a room out there. You can see me using a measure tool right there. That's actually an interesting little side thing that you can do. If you hold down the middle mouse button, Control and Shift and drag, it will give you a measurement for the space that you start and stop from. This type of construction is typically the way that you'll start to flesh things out, namely that I'm just using the vertex editing tool on the brush to go in and sort of flesh out the general large bulk areas. You can see me building hallways, building rooms. Really sort of freeform and intuitive, as opposed to building a brush and sort of trying to get it the exact right size right off the bat. What I'll generally end up doing is this sort of thing where I work visually. Built ourselves a walkway here. We're going to take and replicate that several times and make ourselves a series of walkways in this level. And I should note that I'm not doing this all off the fly. I'm actually doing this off of a paper map design. And you can choose to work either way, and neither way is really right or wrong. It really sort of comes down to how you end up deciding you like to work in the end. You can see as well there that at times I'm working with several of the built brushes at a time. As far as the vertex editing goes, you see duplicating. If I select the brushes and then hit Control W, instead of just duplicating, for example, objects, as we saw earlier, we can duplicate entire brushes and move them and rotate them. See brush clipping. Building more walkways, clipping off portions of them. Here I'm going to make some raised areas in the floor on the map. In the source material, these ended up being pipes that were sort of set into the floor, but we'll add those later on. Right now, we just want some raised areas to simulate the gameplay. And we've got ourselves a finished BSP portion of the map, which took me in practice about 20-30 minutes, but we, of course, sped it up right there. All right, the next thing we're going to do is texture all of this BSP. So you can see here, we can click and highlight areas of the floor or highlight any of them. What we're going to do here is select all of the planar surfaces with what we have selected, or all the floor pieces. And going to the texture browser, we're going to go grab ourselves a floor texture. And you can see as soon as we clicked on it, it applied it to all of the surfaces that we had selected. You can see here that some of it doesn't quite line up. So we're going to bring up the Surface Properties editor and align them. You can see here that we're going to go down and select the planar projection, click Align, and all the surfaces we have selected are going to align. And now what we're going to look at is the Texture Movement tool. So we're going to select these surfaces and go activate the tool. And if we Control left click, we're going to move in the X or U direction. Control right click, and we're going to move in the V direction. And if we Control right and left click, we're going to scale up and down by dragging the mouse up and down. Fairly handy. Let's go ahead and we're going to select all the surfaces with a matching texture here and then realign them again so they're all lining up. And we're going to go ahead and look at the texture rotation tool now. So again, we have these surfaces selected, and we're going to Control right click and rotate them. All right, we saw texture scaling with the movement tool before. We can also apply simple scales to the entire surface. You can see, just give it a scale of 0.5, hit apply, and it scales it appropriately. And you can see there are several other values there as well. All right, we're going to work our way around the rest of the level here and apply some other textures. And again, it is as simple as selecting a surface or series of surfaces and picking a texture to apply to them. This is an interesting little tool. We can Alt right-click on a surface, which you can see here, and then Alt left-click on a surface and apply the texture that we had on the original surface that we clicked on. Very quick way to apply surfaces. Technically, Alt right-clicking selects the texture in the texture viewer or the texture browser that you're working with. And if we add a light in there, we can see we've got already kind of a moody looking level going on. What I'm doing here to add these lights real quick is holding down the L key and then left-clicking on a surface, and it automatically adds a light in there. Just a little shortcut. All right, so what we're going to do now is just sort of fast forward to where we've got all of these textures applied in the level. You can see we've got our floor texture around. We've applied a wall texture to all the walls. We've got a ceiling texture in this room. And we'll just zoom around and take a look. And we've put some lights around the level as well so we can see where we're going. This took probably 5-10 minutes tops to apply the texture to these, and in a more complicated level, obviously that time will increase. You can see that we've added a player start here. Again, we did that by right-clicking, going add player start, and once that's in place, we can play the level, which is what we're going to do next. All right, so this is in the engine now, and you can see we can move the character around. We're still in the spectator mode here, so we can pretty much fly all around the level and just take a look at it. And really, that's all we're doing now is just sort of previewing what we've done and how it looks in Engine, because InEdItor will give you a basic idea of what it looks like, but it's always good to go in and preview in Engine because there's a little bit of a discrepancy between the two. Again, all the surfaces textured, lights added. I want to look around and make sure that all of the main gameplay areas that we're anticipating working in, we can see. We're going to come back and, of course, refine the lighting later. But for right now, as you're working in this and as you want to check out the gameplay or check out the level that you've built, it's best to have everything lit, at least bright enough so you can see how you're moving around. All right, you can see we've started playing the map now. There's a bunch of bots running around. And of course, there's no path node. There's only one player start in the level, and so it's going to be a bit of mayhem. But again, we've got a basically functional level that we can run around in. Okay, next what we're going to look at is creating zones for performance reasons. And what this entails is creating sheets or planes that divide the level up into separate discrete areas. And what we've activated here is the zone view mode, which is going to show us the BSP cuts, that's what all these facets are, and then in particular color code the zones that are in the level. Right now we haven't added any zones, so it's all one color. What we're going to do here is create a plane, and we're going to resize it to be exactly the size of, if not a bit bigger than one of the hallways, for example. So what needs to happen is this plane has to fully intersect all the edges of the BSP that it's going to block off there. So we've made it 512 by 512, and we're going to go into our top view here and rotate it. Now we're going to change the size up a little bit more. All right, that's a little bit closer to the size of the hallway. All right, now we'll move this guy up. Make sure that he's right on top of and intersecting every single edge of that hallway. And now what we're going to do is go click on the Add Special Brush, and we're going to drag it down to Zone Portal. Click OK. And you can see as we move the builder brush away that we've got this green brush in here. Green means that the brush that we've added, or the BSP surface we've added, is non-solid. So you can see we've got a surface there. It's non-solid. Also, you can see that when we press the real-time preview button, because it's a zone portal, it disappears. All right, so that's one zone portal. What we need to do now is add zone portals for every single hallway or every single opening into an area. So you can see we're just going to continue to move the brush around and add zone portals on all of the hallways that lead into this room on the top end of the map here. Again, when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you're getting the brushes directly on, or I should say fully surrounding the passageways. So we had to go to the view here and make sure that we pulled it down low enough to get these lower hallways. And now we've fully sealed off this room. So, fully sealed it off, we're going to need to rebuild it, but when we rebuild it and we have it in zone portal view or zone viewing mode, you can see that both of these zones are a different color. Even both of these sides of the zone portal sheet are a different color as well. What this does is tell the Unreal Engine that these are separate, discrete zones for performance reasons. So as you traverse a map, if there are zones on the other side of the map which are not visible to you, either because you can't see them as BSP geometry is in the way or anti-portals are in the way, again, anti-portals we'll talk about later, then it won't display those zones or any of the objects in those zones. All right, we're going to segment off one more area here. I should say cut it off the zones. This room on the left, and again, place the brush, place a zone portal. And you can see I'm doing the front and back side of this. In general, it's a good idea to do the front and back side of hallways. It just tends to help with the performance later on. And we'll see how the zones function here and what their actual functional usage is in just a moment when we go to an in-game clip. So we're going to move this guy down, make sure he covers up the hallway again. Add a zone portal. And we'll get the other side of that hallway as well. And again, when we rebuild the BSP, we're going to see that the zones are color-coded differently. All right, so let's go see what effect that is going to have in the game engine here. All right, so what we're going to do here to visualize this effect is go to R mode 1. Go to the console, type R mode 1, and that's going to put us into wireframe mode. What wireframe mode is going to let us see is how other portions of the map and other zones are being clipped or occluded through the wireframe. So you can see as we move around, for example, approach a wall where another portion of another zone is being occluded, that the wireframe in that portion is being occluded as well. Now, right now we're just seeing BSP wireframe go away, but if we had objects within the level or other players running on the level, we would see those disappear and not be visible to us as well. And that, again, is the entire function of zones, to serve as a performance barrier, performance cutoff, where if we're in one area and we have another area of the map occluded, we can't see into that area or what's happening. And so what will happen in function or in application is that we will try and segment our map up into as many logical areas as possible. I shouldn't say as many, but into logical areas, so that as we're moving around the map, we can only see and only have being taken into account by the computer at that point in time what we need to for what we're seeing with the player. So what we're going to do now is open up the finished version of this, and you can see here that we've segmented the map out into zones where the hallways are cut into their own zones, and all of the rooms are separated from each other. And if we go into wireframe mode, you can see that we have zone portals pretty much all across all of the hallways and rooms in the map. And again, go take a look at this guy in game, and we're going to go into wireframe mode. And as we move around here, just take note of what is being occluded and not occluded in the map. And again, we're just in spectator mode and flying around the map. You see portions of the BSP disappearing as we move. And just to reiterate, of course, if there was objects that were in these zones as well, and not just BSP, we would see them disappearing. We'll look at this again as we get the maps more fully complete. R mode 5 puts us back into shaded mode. And that is going to be the map fully zoned for performance reasons. So let's go ahead and wrap this one up and move on to creating some functionality in the map.